Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I want to talk about trashy books and why I think we as readers should value them even if we don't enjoy reading them. So I do talk quite a lot about trash on the channel, especially at the moment in the run-up to August 1.5, which is next weekend. I did a video a while ago about why I think reading trash is good for us as readers. And I was reflecting on that and thinking about some kind of other aspects of trash as a part of publishing overall. And I wanted to do kind of a counterpoint video to the one I did a while ago, talking about why I think trashy books are important to publishing and literature, and why therefore I think we as readers should value them even if we don't like reading them. And I know that a lot of people, do not enjoy trashy books. A lot of people enjoy higher brow stuff, and would rather not read, what they consider to be very throwaway books. I completely get that. And everybody should read the books they enjoy. That's always been kind of a really important part of the channel for me, is that we as readers and as booktubers should celebrate reading whatever people are reading, whether it's trash or whether it's Tolstoy. So I've got a few things I want to talk about in this video, and it'll be interesting to see what you out there think of my opinions. Do let me know in the comments what you think. These Sunday videos are always really about starting a conversation rather than having all the answers, which is a kind of slightly pretentious way of saying it's just me rambling on for a bit. So let me know what you think in the comments anyway. So let me just start by quickly defining what I consider to be trashy books. And it's not, as I've said before, it's not a comment on the quality of the book. It's more a comment on the reason why the book exists. So I consider trashy books to be books that have been published to cash in on something. So, something that the public are particularly interested in, and it could be, there's been a successful film of a certain type and publishers rush to get out books that are similar. It could be, a successful book. We see these trends in publishing. So, after the huge success of 50 Shades of Grey, for example, there were loads of books that were published, and you would see in, supermarkets and things like that were similar, erotica written for women, often with, kind of slightly S&M tones, and almost always with black and white covers that kind of looked a bit classy and a bit like the 50 Shades of Grey cover. So publishers are, always looking for the next bandwagon to jump on, and will do that in order to, to make cash, because, their businesses, that's their job. So I think that's a really important feature of trashy books, is that they tend to be published in order to make a quick buck. So you often see, books cashing in on, as I said, books and movies, but also, very long-running series where, I've talked about the Execution series on the channel. That's a series that has over 400 books, and the reason there are over 400 books is because they were successful. So the publishers kept churning them out. It was only the first 30 or so books that were written by the original author, Don Pendleton. After that, they got various other people to write them, and still stuck Don Pendleton's name on the cover. That's the kind of thing you see in trashy books, in trashy publishing. So why is that important for us as readers generally? Well, it's important because it gives publishers an easy way to make money. That's why they publish these books, because they think they can make a quick buck off them. And what that means is they've got the finances and the resources to also invest in higher brow stuff. So even if you don't like trashy books, even if you you are a fan of literature, I think you should respect trashy books because of their important role to the publishing industry overall. So it's those books that make a profit for publishers. The books that win the Booker Prize, or the books that are nominated for the Booker Prize, I suspect don't really make profit. Don't really make a profit for the publishers. The books that win the Booker Prize probably do, because there's a load of buzz around them. But only one book wins the Booker Prize every year, doesn't it? Whereas loads get nominated, and publishers, try to get their books nominated for the Booker Prize because there's a prestige thing there for them. But they, the Booker Prize books don't pay the bills. the executioner pays the bills. Harlequin romances pay the bills. And I think we as readers should respect that. Should respect the importance of that kind of very mass-produced popular fiction. The important role that plays in publishing overall. Let's talk about something different then. So something non-economic. So I think one of the other really important things about trashy books is that they encourage people to read. So trashy books are often people's gateway drug, if you like, into reading, into literature, and particularly things like books that are cash-ins on movies. That's a great way to get people reading. And when I was a kid, a lot of the first quote-unquote adult books I read were movie tie-ins. So things like, the novelisation of Gremlins, the novelisation of Ghostbusters. I read those back in 1984 when those movies came out when I was 11, and loved them. And they got me thinking about different kinds of books to the books I'd read as a kid, the books that have been, promoted to me, if you like, at school, which often were drier and less fun. Reading books that were based on popular movies showed me a different side of books that I immediately fell in love with and enjoyed, and that got me reading other horror books, other sci-fi books, and just continued to expand my reading. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I think a lot of people cut their teeth, if you like, on trashy books because they tend to be immediately appealing and maybe have an appeal that's broader than the appeal of most books. So they will suck new readers in, and they also tend to be easy to read. They're often quickly written, and what that means is they are simply written. There is not a lot of complexity or depth there, which means they're easy and enjoyable to read, which again pulls in new readers. And once it's once the connection with the movie has pulled the reader in, and they've read the book and enjoyed it because it was a good story and it was simple to read. You're halfway to being hooked on reading then, aren't you? So I think that's another really important aspect of trashy books. They pull new readers in. Okay, my next reason everyone should love trashy books is because I think they're a really interesting reflection of the culture at the time that they were written. So as I've said, trashy books are often published to cash in on public fears and interests at the time, and what that means is the books tend to be obsessed with those things. So you get current fashions, current fears reflected in trashy books to an extreme degree, which makes them really interesting little time capsules for the time that they were written. Moving on then, so I've said that trashy books encourage new readers. I think they also encourage new writers. So I think trashy books are easier to write, and I might be doing the writers of trashy book a disservice here, but because they are mass produced and publishers are interested in getting something out to meet a particular demand and getting it out quickly, I think that the quality control, shall we say, on a trashy book may not be as high as the quality control on a work of literature. And what that means is you don't have to be the best writer in the world to write a trashy book. And I think that encourages new writers to try their hand at things. You see that nowadays with like the boom in self-publishing and on Kindle Unlimited and things like that. There are loads of Kindle Unlimited books that I would consider to be trashy books. But people know there's a market for them if they can get them out there with an appealing cover slapped on the front. Someone will want to read that book. And what that allows writers to do, new writers to do, is to practice writing, to see what works, to get an audience to read their books, and to get feedback, through reviews and things like that of what they've written, and understand what works, where they can improve, and things like that. So I think trashy books, as well as being an important thing for new readers, are an important thing for new writers. And when you look back at some of the great writers of the 20th century, a lot of them started out writing in the pulp magazines. So like Raymond Chandler, who is one of the giants of crime fiction, started out writing short, pulpy crime stories, which were basically trash. I mean, very good trash, but trash. And I think he, or someone like Dashiell Hammett, they're a great example of writers who become central to our kind of popular culture and central to crime fiction, who started out writing essentially trash, who cut their teeth on it, and found, were able to develop their craft through writing, writing quickly a lot of short stories. And similar to my point about trashy books paying the bills for publishers, I think they also often pay the bills for authors. So I think there are loads of authors out there who write trashy stuff under pseudonyms in order to pay their bills whilst they kind of sweat and toil over their magnum opus that they think is going to make their name and last for decades. So someone like Michael McDowell, who's a very well respected horror author, also wrote a load of trashy men's adventure type books under pseudonyms. And I think that's probably something that's quite common. I think there are a lot of writers who know they can make a quick buck by writing trashy stuff, which gives them the space to concentrate on the things they really want to write, and that's got to be beneficial for everyone, hasn't it? Like the point about publishers, if we can find a way for the great writers of tomorrow to finance themselves today, I think we should all be in support of that. And when you take all of those things together, I think there's an argument that trashy books are kind of the foundation of modern publishing, that without them, everything else would just fall apart because publishers and authors wouldn't be able to pay their bills. And if you think about, an author who is considered, one of the greats of English literature, if not the greatest novelist of English literature, Charles Dickens. Dickens wrote books that were designed to be popular. They often reflected the interests of the public at the time, and what's more, they were often published in a serial form. And not only were they published in serial form, they were published in magazines that Dickens owned and edited himself. So he was enormously invested in the success of his stories commercially, and in making sure that readers would want to come back week on week, month on month, and buy the magazines again. So I think there is also an argument that Charles Dickens is the greatest trashy author of all time. Okay, time for a random book from the shelves. So I talked about some authors having cut their teeth writing in the pulp magazines. One such author was H.P. Lovecraft. He wrote many stories for Weird Tales, and is now hugely respected as a foundational author of modern horror fiction. There is a Penguin Classic edition of Lovecraft's work, or some of Lovecraft's work. There's also this lovely Barnes & Noble hardcover, which I have, which contains the complete Cthulhu Mythos stories, and which is a lovely book and also a fantastic read. So Lovecraft is always worth dipping into if you fancy experiencing a real master of short horror fiction. So I hope you found that interesting. As I said at the start, this is supposed to be the beginning of the conversation. So do let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.